Jasmine, 1989, Bharati Mukherjee. Here are many things I deserve, not all of them better. Bharati Mukherjee was born in Calcutta, India, in 1940 to a wealthy Brahmin family who valued education. Her father was a PhD-trained chemist who founded his own pharmaceutical company, and Mukherjee and her two sisters received private school education in India. Mukherjee earned a BA degree in English from the University of Calcutta and an MA degree in English and Ancient Indian Culture from the University of Baroda before travelling to America to earn an MFA degree in Writing and a PhD degree in English and Comparative Literature from the University of Iowa, all before turning 30. While at the Iowa Writers' Workshop, Mukherjee married Clark Blaze, a fellow student and Canadian writer, even though her parents were already selecting a proper Indian husband for her. Both Mukherjee and Blaze held tenured professorships at McGill University until Mukherjee could no longer tolerate the racism she encountered in Canada. In 1980, they moved to New York and have lived in America since. Since 1972, Mukherjee has been writing novels and teaching in various university settings. She presently lives in California and teaches at the University of California at Berkeley, Madrid. Wall 200. Mukherjee's work includes The Tiger's Daughter, 1972, Wife, 1975, Days and Nights in Calcutta, written with Clark Blaze, 1977, Darkness, 1985, The Sorrow and the Terror, also with Blaze, 1987, The Middleman and Other Stories, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award in 1988, Jasmine, 1989, The Holder of the World, 1993, Leave It to Me, 1997, and Desirable Daughters, a novel, 2002. Mukherjee says the purpose of her writing is to make the familiar exotic, the exotic familiar. While she writes about much that would be considered exotic to the Euro-American reader, Mukherjee insists in her essay, A 400-Year-Old Woman, that she not be ghettoized as a hyphenated writer. I am an American. I am an American writer, in the American mainstream, trying to extend it. This is a vitally important statement for me. I am not an Indian writer, not an exile, not an expatriate. I am an immigrant. My investment is in the American reality, not the Indian. Jasmine is Mukherjee's best known and most often taught work. The discontinuous narrative spans several incarnations of the main character. In her native Punjabi village of Hasnapur, she is Jyoti, a young girl whose fate has been predicted by the village astrologer. When told she will become a widow and an exile, the young Jyoti reacts strongly and falls, cutting her forehead. The cut leaves a star-shaped scar that she calls her third eye, not unlike the third eye of the holiest sages who use the eye to see invisible worlds. Jyoti comes from a culture where a daughter had to be married off before she could enter heaven, and dowries beggared families for generations. As the fifth daughter and seventh of 9 children, Jyoti's birth is more a burden than joyous event from the beginning, though she is a survivor, outliving the attempted infanticide that leaves a ruby-red choker of bruise on her throat and sapphire fingerprints on her collarbone. When the young Jyoti reveals her aspirations to be a doctor and set up a clinic, she is proclaimed mad. Her paternal grandmother says, "Blame the mother. Insanity has to come from somewhere. It's the mother who is mad." At 14, however, Jyoti is married to Prakash Vij, a friend of her brother. It is a love match unattended by ritual and traditional ceremony. No dowry, no guests, registry office wedding. Her best friend, Vimla, disapproves of the wedding, warning once you let one tradition go, all the other traditions crumble. Prakash is a non-traditional man who encourages Jyoti to leave India's feudal past. He gives her a new name, Jasmine, and encourages her to become more urbanized and modern. He discourages the cultural expectation that she get pregnant immediately after marriage. We aren't going to spawn. We aren't ignorant peasants. In her adjustment to the new life her marriage brings, she says, Jyoti, Jasmine, I shuttled between identities. 15 When Prakash receives an offer from a former professor to go to America to study, Jasmine starts to brush up on her English. The egalitarianism of their marriage flourishes, and Jasmine helps Prakash in his electronic repair business. holds forth the dream that they will open their own store one day. Vij and wife. Maybe even Vij and Vij. Identity. Prakash's counter-traditional philosophies have not gone unnoticed by political traditionalists, and one day as he and Jasmine are shopping in preparation for their trip to America, he is killed by the bomber of a political terrorist. At 17, Jasmine is a widow, and thus half of her childhood prophecy is fulfilled. She determines to go to America alone and stand on the campus of the university where Prakash was to study. There she plans to build a funeral pyre with the new suit he bought for the trip to America and to sacrifice herself in the ritual of sati. With illegal documents that she obtains at great cost, Jasmine sets out. The journey is not on the major airlines in a simple route but is a series of stops across 3 continents facilitated by those who work in the underbelly of human commerce. Jasmine's final leg of the trip is guided by an unscrupulous man she calls Half-Face. Under the guise of giving her safe haven on her first night in America, Half-Face violently rapes Jasmine. Though her first impulse is to kill herself, to balance her defilement with her death, Jasmine instead kills Half-Face as he sleeps. Jasmine meets up with Lillian Gordon, a Quaker humanitarian worker, who takes her in and urges her to let the past make you wary, by all means. But do not let it deform you. Lillian coaches Jasmine in the necessary skills to survive in America and sends her on to New York. There she stays for a time with her husband's former professor until she aches for an experience larger than the recreations of India in a circumscribed Queen's apartment. Through Lillian, Gordon's daughter, she finds work as an au pair in the home of Taylor and Wiley Hayes. There she is reinvented again. Taylor calls her Jace, and she gives account of her lives in this way. Jyoti was now a sati goddess. Soon Jace is tutoring for extra money and strengthening her English. Just as Jace is flourishing in the new environment, Wiley announces that she is leaving Taylor. Jace's friendship with Taylor grows, and she feels secure in her role, knowing that Taylor didn't want to scour and sanitize the foreignness. All is well until one day in the park, the man who killed her husband recognizes Jace, and she realizes she must flee to protect not only herself but Taylor and his daughter as well. She moves to Iowa, choosing it because it was the birth state of Duff, Taylor's adopted daughter. Jasmine moves to Bardon, Iowa, in the county where Duff was born and there is known as Jane, a exoticized American name to fit with solid middle American farm values. In relation to her shifting identities, the character says, plain Jane is a role, like any other. She finds a job as a bank teller, and soon the bank owner, Bud Ripley, is attracted to her. He leaves his wife of many years, and he and Jane move in together. Though they don't marry, the conservative community is forgiving of their relationship because, soon after its beginning when Bud is shot and paralyzed by an angry farmer, Jane faithfully stays with him. When Jane becomes pregnant with their child, Bud urges her to marry him, but she is unwilling to test her fate. The family is a diverse lot of people. Bud, a stalwart community leader who leaves his wife for Jane, an illegal Indian immigrant, has also adopted a teenage Vietnamese orphan, Duthian. In the sea of blonde Germans, Danes, and Swedes of Elsa County, Iowa, the patched-together family is both a divergence from the norm and a harbinger of the multicultural mix that is drawing a new face on Middle America. Jane recognizes though that the new multiculturalism is not on her terms. Bud does not want her to talk about her India, and he is most at ease with her when she is safely Jane and not Jasmine or Jyoti. Parsed in though Jane says, for me, experience must be forgotten, or else it will kill. The denial her identity is not an option that she can live with forever. Thus, when Taylor Hayes re-establishes their relationship through a series of postcards, she remembers and appreciates that he always accepted her in her cultural context. When Taylor and Duff come to Iowa with the invitation for Jasmine to join them in California, she is ready to reconcile with her own past and join them. She says, "It isn't guilt I feel, it's relief. I realize I have already stopped thinking of myself as Jane." The threads of the plot have all been pulled together to allow Jane to live lower. Du has left home for California to see his last remaining sister. Karen, Bud's former wife, is still in love with him and will care for him. Jasmine embraces the courage to challenge her fate. Watch me reposition the stars, I whisper to the astrologer who floats cross-legged above my kitchen stove. Watch me reposition the stars, I whisper to the astrologer who floats cross-legged above my kitchen stove.